It sounds like the Philadelphia Eagles will have a different starting lineup at linebacker than we thought heading into Friday night's matchup against the Green Bay Packers. We'll get into that and more on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Wednesday edition of the show. I'm Louie DiBiase, joined as always by my co-host Gino Camilleri. We're brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Eagles Packers in just 2 days. We got you covered today. Crossover Thursday tomorrow with Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers. Got a Friday show for you as well. So still got you covered heading into this matchup against Green Bay in Brazil. But Gino, a little bit of a switch up on defense heading into this matchup that I don't think we expected. Devin White not only is out with an injury, but Albert Breer and Jeff McClain both followed up with this injury report. We did see he was on the injury report yesterday as a limited participant in practice. But then they went as far as saying not only is he injured, but the Eagles tried to trade White during cutdowns, and Nakobe Dean beat him out for the Mike starting linebacker job. Like, that's, I don't want to say it's a surprise because Devin White did not look good in that first preseason game, but White was like the only linebacker I felt like that was unanimously getting first team reps, and it was always Dean, Bond, Trotter rotating through. But I think the Eagles got to be happy at least that Dean ended up winning and earning this job instead of just being handed it to him like it was last year. So I think it's surprising, but at the same time, probably a good outcome for what the Eagles want long term.
Howie's great at setting himself up for a lot of win-win situations where it's like if Devin White won the job, oh, look at this great, fantastic
sweet,
free
my
agent
top
signing.
5 linebacker, 5th overall pick is back. Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden we just got a gem and like he can come in and maybe we can sign him to an extension. Or it's Nakobe Dean won the job. He looks like that first round talent that you were hoping he could be. Mm-hmm. I think you're in the better position with Nakobe Dean. I think both of you and I are on that same wavelength. Go back and watch the limited spots of Devin White in the preseason. Kind of look lost out there
he
a little
like
bit in coverage.
Year, Devin White, yeah. I'm just surprised because I didn't hear that in practice a lot, Gino, from a lot of beat reporters. So
practice is one thing. When you get out there, it's completely different, right? Like you can kind of get into the rhythm, understand what your offense is calling after a while and start to pick it up. But
true.
I think it was evident when you turn it on, like who was the most explosive, who was the most instinctual, who was the guy covering sideline to sideline the most. It was a healthy Nakobe Dean. And that's a big if. Like a healthy Nakobe Dean is exactly what you need. But Devin White, James Palmer makes a great point on Twitter. He said, it's not out of the ordinary for Howie Roseman to give someone a shot or something a shot and have it not exactly work out and pivot quickly.
Rashad Penny last year kind of reminds me of that, where here's a guy that you thought would be probably a starter, and then he's a big name, former first-round pick that you give a chance, and quickly you realize, oh, this is not it. Maybe that is what it is with Devin White,
I'm looking at this situation and saying, you already won the linebacker debate versus 2023 with this situation currently, because you're saying we don't have to bring in a free agent to supplement the room that we already have, because we had done a good enough job bringing in Nakobe Dean. Yeah, you signed Zach Bond, but if we're looking at it right now, Lou, your future is Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter, in my opinion. Like, Jeremiah Trotter will probably be your more typical Mike style of linebacker.
That concerns me, though, from a coverage perspective. That's what I'm a little nervous about heading into this game, too, with Dean and Bond.
Totally.
That's why I was hoping Devin White would pan out. Not that he's been really great at coverage either the last few years, but he does have that explosiveness where he can get sideline to sideline. I was hoping he could bounce back in that way. But yeah, you're right. I think it is Dean and Trotter. And again, I think this is a good thing because Nakobe Dean was not given the job like he was last year, and they brought in no competition last year. This year, they brought in Devin White. They brought in Zach Bond. They drafted Jeremiah Trotter Jr. They had Ben Van Sumeren. They signed Orion Burks. Like, they brought in a lot of bodies here. They have a new coordinator that owes nothing to Nakobe. He was given second-team reps pretty much the first month of the whole training camp process, and he earned the job. Like, I think that is a really good sign. Now, he has to stay healthy. That's a big if. It's part of why I don't want to get rid of Devin White just yet. Plus, I don't I'm not a big believer in Zach Bond, and Trotter is a rookie, but I think this is a great sign that Nakobe earned this spot.
I think there's one guy in that equation that you mentioned that is probably going to get the biggest bump, and that's Oren Burks. Like all of a sudden, he's probably going to be the guy that gets elevated because you want to go into this game with potentially 4 or 5 backers, especially Van Sumeren is your special teams guy. You'll probably get Oren Burks as like your special team ace. That's kind of what he did for a lot of the time last year when he was in San Francisco until he got elevated. But at linebacker, like once again, these guys that just hang around, Lou, like you just have to be around in that linebacker group until something does go wrong. But honestly, Lou, it kind of has gone in the best way that you can imagine. Like we had talked about, is there ever going to be a year when competition is truly driven through this linebacker position? If it isn't this year, there was no competition last year. Last year, the competition was Nakobe Dean is hurt. We have to bring in bodies simply to put them on the football field. Now you're saying, I think we have a couple guys that we can legitimately put out there and play NFL minutes outside of Nakobe, who's going to be your green dot caller. And one of the things we talked about, Lou, and I think it would kind of be hypocritical for us, maybe this forces their hand to play more defensive backs and you keep less on the field.
I think it does. And we didn't love the matchup for the linebackers in this game, especially now that it is, I would say, Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond playing most of the time. I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. gets a big boost now, Gino, too. Like, I think he's going to rotate through.
Sure, man.
It's not going to be just Dean and Bond playing. I think you'll see Junior playing a lot more now than if Devin White was healthy and if he was active. But yeah, I think this is a very DB heavy approach now for, I think it was going to be all season, but especially in this matchup against Green Bay.
Especially against Green Bay. And once we get into the Falcons discussion next week, I think that'll change a little bit.
That'll definitely change. Yeah,
where you got
definitely different.
Bigger body type of receivers. You might want a little bit more size out there. But against Green Bay, when you're going, it's going to be a track meet. Like they got a 4x100 team out there on the edge.
Say, how many times are they going to probably run like 4 receiver sets? They're not going to want Wicks on the sideline.
No, I run that penny front where you go like 5 down, you have 1 backer, and then you just go 5 in the defensive backfield. And if you go 4 down, you add a 6th defensive back out there, you go to those dime look situations. Because if you're looking at the back 7 and you're ranking these guys, Lou, as much promise as Trotter has moving forward and potentially what the team thinks of Zach Bond, are those guys better than your 3rd, 4th safety out there right now? In my opinion, no. Like I'm putting Cooper DeJean out there. I'm getting Reed Blankenship out there. Exactly. Avonte Maddox too. In this game, we're talking in a vacuum against Green Bay.
Right. I think the linebackers match up better next week against Atlanta. But even when Green Bay has 2 tight ends out there, Gino, they're athletic tight ends. Like Luke
they're not like a Brent Selleck type.
No, these are not just hand in the dirt, blocking Jack Stahl type tight ends. So I think overall it's got to be a DB heavy approach. But it's an interesting development. We'll see now what they do with Devin White when he's healthy. Is he still a part of this rotation? Is he a Rashad Penny inactive? Do they try to trade him? They already tried, so I think that's definitely a hint of what's to come. But it feels like this is Nakobe Dean's job now. And again, I think final conclusion is that's a win.
Yeah, it goes back to what we talked about 3 years ago when you drafted
we wanted
this
for
guy.
years. Yeah,
you just wanted him to be on the football field. You wanted to see him be the quickest, most athletic linebacker that you've had in years, and it's evident when you turn on the tape. It's like, oh, this guy's a little bit different than everybody else that we're putting out there. Like even at his size, and that's what's so mind blowing is that this guy's just touching 6 feet, right? But he plays physical. He plays with no fear in his eyes. And to see a fully healthy Dean out there, Lou, continuity at linebacker, that's something you haven't seen since the departure of TJ Edwards. You haven't had that in back-to-back years since Jim Schwartz when you had
Nigel
that.
Bradham.
Yeah, Nigel Bradham was the only consistent guy that you've had.
That was
there.
the guy you always knew you had on the field.
Yeah, Nate Geary was. I mean, he was in there, but they at least had some sort of continuity.
Reliably terrible,
guys. Yeah, reliably terrible is a great.
You knew he was always going to be out there, not making plays.
Yeah, he was a toy train on a legitimate train track, right?
Yeah.
And you're in a much better situation going into this game. And Nakobe Dean, maybe his main responsibility is like you're the Josh Jacobs guy in this game. Like wherever he goes, you're going to be the guy that covers him out to the flat. We know you can get out there with your explosiveness. If he's going to touch the ball, you have to be able to fill the A gap, B gap. You have to come downhill quickly. If I was going to give the crown to one of these guys from what I saw over the 3 preseason games, and especially Vic Fangio when early on in camp, he didn't sound too in love with the idea of Nakobe Dean being that guy. And to say
No.
that he's earned it, that's a
Dean was in
big
the
form of
doghouse.
respect, man.
Like, Gino, even their open practice at the link, Nakobe Dean had a really bad practice, especially in coverage. Fangio called him out in the next press conference. He was getting second team reps primarily, and then won a finish to camp the last 2 weeks. Like, he was dominant. He was great in every preseason game. He was starting to make plays in coverage, especially in the red zone. Like, what a turnaround. I think this is a big win for the Eagles, and Nakobe Dean will be featured a lot on Friday against the Green Bay Packers. We know on both sides the quarterbacks will be featured heavily. Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love. We'll get into that matchup coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
As we roll along, this episode of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Here at LOE and the entire Locked On Podcast Network, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, which also, by the way, is America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you now through September 22nd. So you have 18 days to get in on this. All FanDuel customers who bet $5 get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. I've never lived in Philadelphia. I've always been relying on Sunday Ticket, and I'm going to be doing that living here in Denver, and I do it with YouTube TV and FanDuel and the NFL Sunday Ticket. What a great trio. With the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. But who's going to want to cancel when you have Red Zone up on Sunday? Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. And we thank FanDuel for sponsoring the Locked On Eagles podcast.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, for your second listen, you got to check out the new Locked On NFL podcast. 2 shows every single day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight. Hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in just 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, what a huge matchup on Friday for the NFL in general. I mean, it's a great quarterback week, I would say, for Thursday. You got Pat Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. Then you got Jalen Hurts against Jordan Love. But, you know, it's interesting, like, I don't watch national football coverage a whole lot. I think we all know why. It's mostly just loud noise, hot takes, not accurate reporting from analysts. I'm not really that into, don't respect all that much. But at the same time, it is hard to avoid it, especially when it's about your team that you're covering. And it is interesting, like the tone of how people are discussing Jalen Hurts versus Jordan Love. And it's almost like the sense I'm getting is people are almost saying or demanding that Jalen Hurts proves to them more than Jordan Love this year. And it's weird because the two almost had like the same season, just completely switched, right? The first half of the year, Jalen Hurts was an MVP candidate. Jordan Love was a struggling first-year starter. Then the second half of the year, Jordan Love looked like an MVP candidate, and Jalen looked like the first-year starter. But for some reason, because, and I know it's a recency bias, what have you done for me lately kind of league, but for some reason, it's almost like Hurts needs to prove more than Love is the narrative, and I just don't think that's true. And I'm a Jordan Love guy, but I still think right now, Jalen Hurts is in a higher tier than Love, and it doesn't feel like he's being treated that way despite his bigger sample size.
I'm almost looking at Jordan Love right now as like that 2022 Jalen Hurts, where it's like, you know, the expectations are coming, and he's probably going to put together a really, really good
I think he's
season.
going to. Yeah.
This
is not against Love. It's why people are giving him the hype that I think Jalen deserves too. But
I think Jalen, with a couple other guys in the NFC, like they're in that elite, very good territory.
Yeah.
I think the guy just behind them is Jordan Love. Like he's in the
He's
car.
not far back. Like he'll probably be there soon.
Yeah, if you're in a Formula One race, like you're looking at your rear view mirror, making sure that he's not heading up the pack. But one thing I will say, Lou, I'm honestly glad about these discussions, but because if you look for the longest time, it was just Jalen versus Dak. Like that's the only discussion we've had, right? Like it's like those two going at it. There's not a lot of young, great, talented quarterbacks coming through the NFC. Now the NFC, Lou, we're having these discussions. These are the guys going to be challenging Jalen Hurts moving forward. So come a year from now, if we're saying, yeah, Jordan Love is for sure a better player than Jalen Hurts, well, now can we start to get a little bit of a race? Do they start to push the pressure of each other and make each other better? because I don't see Jalen Hurts faltering to situations like this, right? Like he's going to come into Friday night and accept this challenge. I'm going against a Green Bay Packers team with a talented quarterback, but guess what? I'm more talented. You just have to go and show that. Like that's what Jalen Hurts does. He's been on the biggest stage, and that's why it's hard to say right now, Jordan Love, yeah, he did start to challenge for a position in an NFC championship. Like he was right there. But I'm still taking our guy in Jalen Hurts in this offense, which is made for him. But at the same time, Jordan Love is in an offense which is catered to him, man. Like you see that arm strength, why teams fell in love with him. You could push the ball downfield time and time and time again. Jalen Hurts comes from this Lincoln Riley type of world. We need to be able to put the ball on a dime in space, be able to put it on their shoulder with timing. Both of these offenses are catered to these players. So I think it's to the benefit of the entire NFC that we are having these discussions, because what you don't want to have is who is challenging your quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
It is
I think these
now
are
we
two of
have
the top-
multiple guys challenging him.
I agree, because before Jordan Love emerged last year, Gino, it was, okay, you've got Jalen Hurts, you've got what? Dak Prescott, and then who are the other legit quarterbacks? Like all of the big giants are in the AFC. Yeah. Brock Purdy and just a bunch of guys that are, I would say Matt Stafford is probably up there. But yeah, it is nice that I'm glad Jordan Love emerged, and I think Caleb Williams will end up being that guy too. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be really good. The NFC suddenly does have a much brighter future at quarterback than it did like a year ago.
I'll say this, Lou.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
I think that Jordan Love is the best quarterback in the NFC North. Like
I agree.
I'll take him over Jared Goff 100 times out of 100 right now.
And stylistically, he's my kind of quarterback. I like the guys that can throw off platform at any different angle, the bendier kind of throwing motion. Jalen's a power quarterback, right? He's more like a Cam Newton style. I love a Jordan Love type, but I do think Jalen's still right now, and it could change quickly this year, and I think Love will end up in that tier with Jalen. I don't think Hurts is going down and Love's going up. I just think Love's going to go up.
Yeah,
but I
think as
of right now, though, heading into the season, I think Hurts is being punished for a couple bad games that the national media watched, and they really just missed the bigger picture of,
they missed
what
the plot. Yeah,
even the entire collapse of the second half. Like for Jalen Hurts specifically, there was really only 2 really bad games. There was a couple that he was fine, he was whatever, he didn't elevate them enough, but people are acting like he was a Carson Wentz 2020 type for a month and a half last year, which I just don't think was the case.
And we brought that point up a lot last year, Lou, where he never had the snowball effect, right? Like, yeah, he did have some bad throws early on in games.
The Giants game, the Seahawks, the Bucks games, those games.
But then he
sucked.
Settled in, though. Like, he didn't continue to make those same mistakes
and it was 3 of 18 games.
And I mean, 3 out of what over the last couple seasons? Like, that's the thing. You have to look at the whole grand scheme of everything. I mean, if you want to take into account Jordan Love, well, after Aaron Rodgers goes away, the first thing that you see is not a player who's up to par of Aaron Rodgers or
people
any
just
of the
remember what the last
them.
thing they saw. I think that's the main part of this.
And that's why you have to look at, I mean, go watch Jordan Love when he was at Utah State and look at the quarterback he is now. Do you think he was going to be ready to play quarterback in the NFL if he never developed into that guy? Do you think Jalen would have been if he never developed and took those steps? Like, it says a lot about these type of guys being in the right environment, the team buying in around them, and the team front office supporting them in a fashion that is sustainable. That's why Green Bay is scary, and that's why you can expect Jordan Love to be in that conversation with these top guys year over year, because your wide receiver group is going nowhere. Your offensive line is only going to get better. Bakhtiari's out of the equation now. You're rebuilding from the ground up. You already got some good pieces. Look at your backfield. Lou, if we took away the helmet and we were just talking about the team on paper and we were breaking it down from an unbiased perspective, we would love the Green Bay Packers and how they set things up when it comes to an offensive perspective.
I agree. It's very similar to what the Eagles have done. They're just farther back because they're younger, right? It's just a couple of years.
Just a year schedule. That's exactly what it is.
In that life cycle. And I think both teams have done an incredible job developing these players, and it shows that both strategies can work if you do it right. I like the quarterback to play and get experience that way, but you got to make sure they don't have a Panthers last year type of setup for a Bryce Young or this year. The Patriots, I think, are smart to put Drake May on ice while this roster looks awful. Jalen Hurts, though, got that experience playing with a really good roster. Jordan Love got that experience on the bench learning from an MVP quarterback. Both worked, and I think it's a testament to both teams that they handled their approach the right way. Both approaches can work, but they both cannot work too. And I think it was executed beautifully. And now we've got a giant quarterback battle on Friday in a whole nother continent.
I also will love when we get to a point when we do those preview shows, Lou, where I can just go down the gambit and say, yeah, I'm just going to take the 7 best quarterbacks. Like last year, we did not know who the 7 best were. We're getting closer to that in terms of the NFC.
I think so.
And I think it's starting to stabilize a little bit. And it comes at the forefront of the development of these young guys like the Jalen Hurts, the Jordan Love. This is the next class, the Brock Purdy's. These are the guys who we are going to be competing against for hopefully years. Like, this is what you're going to see now. This Green Bay isn't going away. Like, get used to this duo battling it out with each other. And I think both franchises are going to sit there and say, yeah, I'll take my guy to battle. Packers fans will say they'll take Jordan Love to battle, but it's a great situation to be in, Lou, where we're not looking and saying, hey, is the grass greener in another quarterback situation? Both franchises are set up for success. And the NFL, it's a copycat league, man. Like, do you not think Howie Roseman took some ideas of how to build around his young quarterback from Green Bay and vice versa? I don't have bad things to say about the Packers. Like, I wish I did. It's just like they're doing it really well this time around, man.
We got a lot of respect. A lot of Packers fans have been checking out our videos, and it's the nicest
shout out
comments.
to you guys in the comments.
Like,
the nicest
last
people
year, I'll never forget the Miami Dolphins game. I mean, we just had people after us for a week from Miami.
Yeah, we were enemy number
one.
But
all these comments in Green Bay, it's like, props to the Eagles, go Pack. Like, I'm like, all right, cool. It's hard to hate this team heading into Friday. Still want to win, though. The Eagles and Packers have had some massive matchups in the past, so we'll take a trip down memory lane as we wrap up this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of Locked On Eagles is sponsored by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors, they have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and to level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eagles-Packers this Friday to kick off the 2024 season for the Birds, and it's a huge game. The Eagles, I think more than ever, need to start off fast. They've only lost 2 Week 1 matchups in 13 years, which is crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this year, Gino, it is more important than ever because of how last year ended. They got to get the vibes back on track, and it's a massive matchup against a really good Packers team that you could be battling for a top seed with. So it's a huge game, and that's not like that's no stranger to these two teams when they battle. It feels like every time these teams play, there are pretty significant ramifications.
Outside of 2014 when the Eagles just got their absolute doors blown off.
Or 2013 when they beat Aaron Rodgers didn't even play, and the Eagles, Nick Foles blew him out. I couldn't even tell you who Scott Tolzien was the quarterback.
Yeah, 27-13 that game as well.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I ever witnessed an Eagles-Packers game that mattered. 4th and 26. Man, do I remember that vividly on that big old chunky TV we had with the first couch we ever had. Seeing Freddie Mitchell get that ball, and I would love to see some FIFA goal line technology how close he was to not crossing that first down line. But you talk about the battle of quarterbacks, it was McNabb and Favre. Like, that was the NFC, man. Like, you look at the two guys that were going to battle each year, McNabb and Favre. That game for me, Lou, I remember it clear as day. And the other one, it wasn't the opener when the Eagles lost to them in that 2010-2011 season, 27-20. It was the playoff game, seeing Michael Vick threw the same exact route on back-to-back plays to Riley Cooper. The first time it works, the second time is an interception. Broke me to my core.
I think they could have won the Super Bowl that year if they beat the Packers. Because
Packers
then you
won it that year.
You play Chicago and Seattle in the next 2 games. Like they could have beat Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl. They were also a shoestring tackle away from winning that game. Deshaun Jackson almost broke free and scored before those Cooper attempts. Man, that one, I would say, like, that's a huge game that changed and Gino, if they win that game, right, Andy Reid's not fired in a few years because Andy Reid doesn't take this dream team approach where they go all in, right? They don't fire Sean McDermott. Their defense is probably better without Juan Castillo running it. Like, there's just always crazy significance. That week 1 game, like Kevin Kolb was supposed to be the franchise quarterback. He goes down. Michael Vick has his on-back moment against Green Bay. Like, Carson Wentz gets benched.
Wins it. Yeah.
The Jalen Hurts era started against the Packers. Wentz was benched against the Packers. It just feels like every time these teams play, there's so much significance to it. So, and I think this Friday is not going to change that one bit, even though it's a season opener.
I think the most recent outing back in 2022 is probably the closest outcome we are going to see to what is going to happen Friday
shootout
night.
Between two stud offenses, great quarterbacks. Yeah, I agree.
You know what that game felt like to me, Lou? That felt like 2017 Eagles-Rams, where it's like there's so much on the line in this game. And we have to put the ball in the end zone every single time because our defense can stop nobody. There were 77 points scored in that Eagles.
Jalen Hurts broke the single game rushing record for an Eagles quarterback that game.
Didn't they rush for over 250 yards as well in that game?
Hurts had over 100, and so did Sanders. Yeah.
Yep. And I think you take that exact approach this time, man. Like, we run the ball until it doesn't work. We go through our offensive line, and we hope Green Bay can stop the run. And if they can't, we're just going to keep doing it, because if we have to get into a throwing situation, like remember what Mike Vick did, and remember that Brett Favre moment where you had to come up in 4th and 26, like these games come down to the wire every single time. Like, you're not just going to go and trounce over the Green Bay Packer outside of that 2014 game, Lou. I remember that one because I just sat on my college couch with my roommates and just said this has to be the lowest point. Like, we're watching Mark
Sanchez? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're watching Mark Sanchez and that offense to do absolutely nothing when you're seeing one of the precipices, if that's the precipice of offense in the NFL at the time, scoring 53 points. And it's just kind of been like a wave. Like, the Eagles take it sometimes, Green Bay takes it sometimes. The Eagles take it sometimes, Green Bay takes it.
Well, even like 2019 was a massive game too. It was Thursday Night Football. The Eagles are 1-2. The season's kind of on the line early on, right? And Carson Wentz and Aaron Rodgers are in that shootout. Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders run it down their throats. Like, that was a great game too. And it was kind of a statement win. Wentz really had never beaten like a top quarterback in a shootout like that before. Kind of changed the tide of the season, at least early on. But yeah, it's always been big between these two teams. And again, I think it's just so crucial. If the Eagles lose this game, it's not the end of the world. But I really think they've always won that first game, but this one is just extremely important. It is crazy, Gino, that we've rarely had disappointment to kick off the season. They've only lost, again, twice in 13 years with week 1.
And one of them was Green Bay. So it's like, damn, that's the one that
it was Green Bay and then Atlanta in 2015.
Well, let's hope that we don't have a Kevin Kolb like moment where we're like, oh, now we have to bring the
I don't want to
backup
see Kenny Pickett in this game.
No, that wouldn't be great. But I think we kind of have to say thank you to the Packers, and the Packers kind of have to say thank you to us, because the first time Jordan Love really like hopped out of the gate was against the Eagles in that shootout.
Both of these quarterbacks kind of had their what's
Jalen doesn't become Jalen without Green Bay, so it's like we
kind
of got to shake each other's hands on this one a bit.
No, that's a good point. I can't wait for this game. We've got more coverage though for you tomorrow. Crossover Thursday with Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers. Got a show for you Friday. LOE 3 returns. Still got you covered here each and every day leading up to kickoff. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen every day. Make sure again your second listen is the new Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler Rowland, Wiggs. It's going to be a jam-packed season at the Locked On Podcast Network. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.